Dig it! Welcome to Hardheaded Podcast. We're excited that you've joined us as we have a conversation.
It's time to join the conversation.
Welcome to an exciting episode. Chet's got some egg rolls. Look out, folks.
I'm not going to put soy sauce on it while I drive, though.
Why not, man?
It's dangerous.
It is
I care about my
dangerous.
fellow citizens.
It is dangerous, and you shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do it either. All right, hey, we got a special episode for you. It's special because it's episode 150.
$1.50.
Do you like 50 and things that end in zero? Because I do.
I don't know what that means.
Like when you can change a number to either raise it up or down. Do you like even numbers, odd numbers?
Like rounding?
Do you like multiples of 5? Like what do you like?
I'm an expert in rounding. I can round a number any way it needs to be rounded for my benefit.
That's good. Have you seen that movie Rounders?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with my skills.
Right. It's a great movie.
But my truck, I refer to as F, like the initial F, capital F period, Juan Fitty. Juan, F Juan Fitty.
F Juan 50.
Yeah, that's
Fitty.
my truck.
Sounds pretty racist.
Hey, there's Matt. Welcome
to
the
episode
show,
150.
Matt. All right. Well, we got a great show for you today. First, we're going to hear what's on Matt Amos's mind, and then we're going to go into a top 3 items to have in case of an emergency. You could learn something from this. You could save your life, your own life today, if you listen.
Maybe somebody else's.
Maybe somebody else's. And then we're going to hear a good word from Mr. Chet Sears. But Matt, get us started. What's on your mind?
So what's on my mind is actually with your truck there, your F1 50. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty accomplished Call of Duty player, and one of my characters looks like John Wick, but it looks like a Mexican John Wick, and so I call him Juan Wick. So
Sounds racist.
Sounds racist, Matt.
Just trying to relate. No, so what's been on my mind recently, and it's been all over the news, and I'm sure everybody's heard about it, but the attack on Israel with Hamas, or whatever we're gonna call these people. And so, I kind of went through and because I've been seeing a lot of people, which is kind of concerning, that have been on the Free Palestine, and not even coming out and straight up condemning what these people have done. And so I was like, well, I obviously know what side is right. Who's just in the defense of themselves. Obviously, Israel is just in that cause. But I was like, well, what kind of started this? What's been going on? What's the history? Because I don't know the entire history of what's been going on there. And so I just kind of did a little bit of research and trying to find out like where it started, why they have this conflict. And
so as we go, I'm 100% on board with this conversation. We just need to make sure that we distinguish between the people that live in Palestine,
Palestinians,
and Hamas. I may not go with that we should call them Palestinians, because Palestine technically isn't a nation or a state, right?
I don't know.
Okay, well let's talk about it as we go. I'm swinging a little bit out of my pay grade here, but continue, please.
Yeah. So it kind of all started with the Declaration of the Establishment of Israel, which was May 14th, 1948, where Israel was declared an independent state. And immediately after that, and you're going to see kind of a theme as we go along up to 2023. But immediately after, 5 Arab nations attacked the territory of the former Palestinian Mandate. Thousands of people were killed on both sides until the Armistice Agreement was signed in 1949. So then they have about 20 years of peace, and the next thing that pops up is a 6-day war. And it was a conflict that erupted as the relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors worsened. By the end of that, it was a week-long conflict, basically. Israel had taken the Jordanian annexed West Bank, the Egyptian-occupied Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the Sinai Peninsula. So then, basically, everything, there's nothing really huge and major until Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip in 2005. So Israel withdrew from Gaza 38 years after conquering it from Egypt during the Middle East War. They evicted about 10,000 Israeli settlers, abandoned settlements, and relocated them. They also turned the enclave over to the Palestinian Authority. And then the disengagement plan by then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, I don't know if you guys remember him, caused significant turmoil, political turmoil in Israel. So then that was 2005. Now we're in 2006. Hamas wins the elections in Palestine. And so that's going to come into play with some of my thoughts later on. And again, I'll talk about that when we get there. And then June 2006, so just roughly 6 months later after this election, Hamas militants capture an Israeli army conscript, prompting Israeli strikes and incursions. The prisoner was eventually freed 5 years later. And then in 2007, again, about a year later in June, Hamas takes over Gaza. During a brief civil war, Gaza seized control of Hamas seized control of Gaza, ousting Fatah forces loyal to the Palestinian president, who's based in the West Bank. And then in December 2008, so another year and a half later, Israel launches an offensive in Gaza, 22-day military incursion, rockets, all that kind of stuff. About 1,400 Palestinians and 13 Israelis were reported killed before the ceasefire was agreed to. And then we got November 2012. So we had about 4 years where, nothing really major happened. And Israel kills a Hamas military leader. And then 8 days of Palestinian militant rocket fire and strikes followed. And then you got the 7-week war from July to August 2014. The kidnapping and execution of 3 Israeli teens by Hamas sparked a 7-week war. More than 2,100 Palestinians were reported killed in Gaza, with 73 Israelis, 67 of whom were military. Then you've got Palestinian killed in clashes with the Israeli Defense Force. That was more another military skirmish. And then you've got Israeli airstrikes in August of 2022 last year that killed, I believe it killed the Islamic Jihad commander. But in that airstrike to get him, 44 people were killed, including 15 children on that one. And then January of this year, you've got jihadists firing rockets at Israel. And then that brings us to October of this year, where Hamas launched a major assault on Israel just last week. So that's kind of the history of how this whole ordeal has been going on since Israel became a state.
Okay.
So that's just the background. Now, what?
Maybe. So I think, and I agree. Everything that you said is factual, but we can go back even further.
Well, yeah, it obviously goes way since the beginning of time, basically. I mean, that whole area has been a point of conflict. I'm just saying, since Israel became a state and recognized as a state
in our modern time,
that this is where this all kind of started between Hamas and Israel.
Yeah, and I go back, and it's just very interesting how we happen to be studying this at my church right now in my 9:30 class. Joshua, from the book of Joshua in the Old Testament, chapter 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people. So just picking up where this left, Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, and they wandered in the wilderness until that generation passed away because they
Disobeyed.
they didn't have faith. They disobeyed golden calf, all that kind of stuff when Moses gave the Ten Commandments. So at that point, Moses died, and this is God talking to Joshua. You and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River in the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you in the days of your life. And as I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because this will lead the people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. And if we had a map and described all of what he's talking about, it's actually bigger than what the quote unquote nation of Israel is today. It'll go all the way into Iraq when you get to the Euphrates. But the Israelites did not obey God and go set their feet everywhere that he told them to go. But anyway, right after this, they cross over the Jordan, and guess what's there? Jericho. We all know the story of Jericho. So that's modern day Israel, and that is the claim that the Jewish people have on this chunk of property goes back thousands of years.
Yep.
So when the atrocities of the Germans' attempt to eliminate the Jewish race from the face of the earth was happening, at that time, there wasn't a Jewish state, and the people were scattered everywhere. You had, led by Britain, like you said, hey, let's give them some land. Let's let them go back to their home country where they were and establish a state for them. And interesting, Palestine referred to, the actual origin of that word comes from Philistine. And I don't know if you remember any Philistines in biblical times. So a Palestinian, it's not a race of people. It's a description of a location of that area, that region, because at one time it was under the control of Philistines, and we know what happened, how the Philistines got defeated with David and Goliath and all of that. So there is you can't get away from biblical history if you want to go back far enough and talk about what's going on here. And I wasn't prepared for all of this, but if you want to go back to Hezbollah's, or not Hezbollah, Hamas's, it's probably in Hezbollah too. Their constitution, like their goal, is to wipe all the Jews off the earth. So it's not necessarily a political party as it is a party that has a goal of killing others. Like they are very open about that. Like that's the reason that they exist. And what you said, you wanted to go back and talk about their election, Matt? Like what were you wanting to say about that?
So that kind of goes into the whole topic, but looking it up, Palestine is actually officially a state.
According to who?
According to officially, the state of Palestine is a state located in the southern Levant region of West Asia.
According to Wikipedia?
Yeah, that's
well, who can edit Wikipedia?
Well, I'm trying to find another.
I can.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Anybody can.
Yikes. So there's a war going on right now.
And we're recording this before it's released,
right?
Almost a week ahead of time.
Right.
So it may be over now. I don't know.
Yeah, as you're hearing this, it may be over, but because there's been a lot of 7-day, 3-day
Yeah,
wars,
but they're gearing up to go in and just go door to door. Couple problems with that though, Matt.
Well, haven't they been doing that already?
No.
Not yet.
Hamas hasn't done that yet?
No. Israel is about to go into Gaza door to door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because Hamas started the whole thing going and killing civilians.
Yeah, and then they're calling for a ceasefire. Like, oh, let's negotiate. And we're like, no, dude, you came over and killed women and children.
Right.
At will. And who you didn't kill, you took back and did whatever you wanted with them. I don't know how far down the path you went, Matt. You probably went farther than I did, but I saw some stuff that's just sickening. Just it's unbelievable how they treat humans. And just because they're not of the same race that they are, and that their goal is to completely
wipe them off the earth.
But it's not just that. It's torture and rape and maim and kill and behead, and it's gross. Like it is gross. The reports are coming in of them beheading babies. They're just going into like the people. So the music festival, like some of them got to their cars and were trying to drive away, shot them all while they're driving by. Like I've seen videos. They're just shooting at them, and then they end up getting them. And some that they got the car to stop, they just burned everybody in it alive. I mean, it's not a war. It's a terrorist attack. Like it was a 100% terrorist attack. And Israel's going to go about it how Israel's going to go about. And I'm definitely not one to say how you go to war against a terrorist organization. They're bombing buildings. Now they're telling people, and we know that Hamas will put munitions and communication centers and all of this in apartment buildings where other people live that may not be tied to them. And so Israel's been going in and saying, hey, just so you know, everybody in this building, we're going to level it in 10 minutes. If you're not out here in 10 minutes, you're dead. So they'll tell them that. And then 10 minutes later, they bomb that to rubble. But from a strategic perspective, what is the benefit of leveling these buildings if you're about to go in there? You can't go in there with tanks now because the roads are...
Tanks will run right over that.
I don't know, man. Like,
oh yeah,
like just 20-foot high of concrete rubble.
Just run up, no big deal.
But like your troops aren't going to follow the tanks.
No, so
it doesn't seem strategic.
The whole
other than they're taking out some of their communications infrastructure and their munitions,
which is the big thing, but which is what they're trying to do. But so I want to back up a little bit, and one. We don't know for sure because I've been searching, which it may sound a little dark, but I've been trying to find truth in some of the claims that have been made because we live in an era of misinformation.
Yeah.
Because obviously they ran through and they killed these people at a music festival. They've taken hostages. You've seen I don't know if you've seen the girl that they were parading around the back of the truck, that her body was contorted, like
broke her bones and all that.
Yeah. Every joint was basically dislocated, and she's in the back of this truck. And I'm like,
dead,
well, and then there have been reports that say she's actually still alive. And I'm like, that's not, no. But that's the psychological warfare that the terrorist organization is playing on this innocent mother. That they've told her that her daughter, oh yeah, she's alive. We took her to the hospital. You're playing on that hope, and but these. So anyway, and with Israel, the way that they're reacting, and now you've got all these people on social media that are pro, Palestine or pro. I'll even go to say pro Hamas, pro terrorism.
Yeah,
that would support or not, support these organizations or not denounce them. There's chapters of Black Lives Matter that have come out in support of Hamas and what they've done. So that kind of gives you an idea of what kind of organizations are backing them. So just keep that in your memory bank there. It could, because any organization that supports that type of evil, they need to be gotten rid of. They need to go. And that's why I think in this whole, because I spent a good chunk of my 20s and all of my 20s fighting terrorism. And how do you go about it? Because you got these people that they can fight here and there, right? They come out, they pop out, they do some bombs, or they do some shots, or they'll run out and kill some people real quick, but then they shrink back into the population to where it's like, okay, we don't know who they are. Because as soon as they start to get pressured and they start losing bodies and their buddies start getting killed, it's like, oh, well, we're going to calm down. We're just going to kind of shrink down to the background, and we're going to wait till things chill out, and then we're going to come out and do it again. And so how do you, I guess that's a conversation for our times, is how do you combat that? Because there's no longer going to, I don't think there's any more going to be traditional warfare where you've got uniformed armies fighting against each other on a known battlefield. I just don't think that that's really the way that these things are going to take place. It's all going to be that guerrilla warfare, which is incredibly hard to fight, which them going in and trying to soften up those targets, you want to destroy their ability to communicate. You want to take out, whatever munitions or bomb making materials that that they might have. You want to take those out. But the only way that you're going to combat it and try to keep the innocent lives of people who are just trying to live day to day is to go in and fight it hand to hand, with troops on the ground, going door to door. And I think that's the only way that you can really combat that. Because it's a lot harder to make a mistake one-on-one than it is just a bomb that says, to whom it may concern. But so part of me thinks, it's like, you got these innocent people, and you don't, obviously you don't want to kill them. You don't want to hurt them. They're just trying to live their life. But then you also have these people that voted for this group to be in charge because, or unless they just, and see, that's what I'm trying to figure out is how Hamas was elected or because it says they were elected. So I don't know if it's like a held election or if it's just like, hey, we're just going to take over.
It was a held election, but they haven't allowed elections on the schedule since. So the people put them in power,
right?
Supposedly under free election, but then they kind of they've taken over and done their thing since then.
So that's kind of my thing, right? Is I mean, like as part of me is like, you gotta abide by the laws of war. You can't, you want to do the least amount of harm possible to civilians. The other part of me is, I mean, they're complicit. They voted them in. Give people the opportunity, kind of like they did in Fallujah. Put it over the loudspeaker, and I know they're working on a way to get these people out. I think they're going to try to limit it to about 2,000 a day or something like that of people that can evacuate. But and then get everybody out and say, hey, okay, at this day and time, if you're still in this city, you're an enemy, and we're going to kill you. And then just have at it. I think that's about the only way, and that's kind of what we did in Fallujah. But I think it's a lot more complicated than that because we look at that and then all of a sudden we have this void of power. Who's going to come in and take it over? Because we didn't think about that in Iraq. That wasn't really planned out. We didn't think about that in Afghanistan. That wasn't really planned out. So let's help our neighbor, and let's help our ally figure this out beforehand. It's like, okay, if you're going to destroy these people and take them out, who do you have that those people would be agreeable to taking over? So there's a lot to think about, but it's super, super complicated. The way that you go back is you just want to go in and just kill everything and just be done with it. That would be the easiest way.
Well, and that's what they want to do. Is.
But at that point too, you can't. If you do that, then you're no better. than the people that are just going and killing your citizens. I will say, in these clashes and these 7-week wars and all that, I don't know if you guys noticed a theme, but the Hamas would take civilians and they would kill civilians, or they do that, and then Israel was always going after military targets.
Right. Hidden under civilian.
Yeah,
locations.
they may have had some civilians that were, collateral damage, trying to get one of these guys, which that just unfortunate. That's warfare. That's going to happen.
Yep.
But it's pretty clear to see who's on the right side of things. And I just what I don't understand, I guess what's been on my mind is, how do we have these people in New York and Sydney, Australia, and all these places around the world that are calling for free Palestine and holding up signs, gas the Jews and blah, blah. I mean, it's like, how far have we slipped from 1945? You know what I mean? Like how have we already come full circle back to that? What was the programming, and then that thing you sent me today, the Hamas leader that's calling for,
every Muslim in every part of the world to rise up and start killing people.
Like a global jihad. Number one, I'm all for it. Bring it. I haven't killed anybody in a while. It would be a lot of fun. But it's,
Dude.
But I don't, but it, like I said, I don't think we'll have any huge issues here, but some of these bigger cities, may have some problems. I don't know why they would tell everybody the day that they're going to do it, but
yep, they did.
It's just, it's one of those things. It's, from what I've seen, and I like I said, I've been trying to find those videos, and it's a little bit dark, but I can't find anything. The babies. I can't find anything on that. It's all conjecture at this point.
Right.
But they have killed families. They've obviously taken people hostage. There was reports of them dragging a girl behind, one of their trucks, which is something ISIS would have done, but haven't seen any evidence of that. And I've got some websites that, I used to go to, when I would watch ISIS videos to get fired up before deployment. So I had no problem killing these people if I had to kill them. I knew exactly
who they were.
These are
what their goal was.
Yeah, these are not humans. These are people that are possessed by demonic force. And I truly think that that's what it is. I think it's a battle of good and evil. I really think it is. And I think that if you can't directly see that at this point, you might want to reevaluate who you are and your priorities. If you think that you're going to support these people that are killing innocent people, and you're going to try to equate that to, some of the things that Israel's done. It's like, Israel's not perfect. No, there's no country that's perfect. Right. But they've majority gone over and they've gone after military targets. That's everything that I've seen. Mm-hmm. And again, there might be some collateral damage, but then you have these other people that are directly going after people that aren't in the military. They're just out there at a music festival having fun. If it was a music festival put on by, like the USO, and oh man, that's a huge group of military people. Okay, I can kind of get that attack maybe, but it was just some kids basically having fun, and you're going to go out there and kill them. And I think that deserves to be dealt with the utmost you got to throw at them.
Yeah, and just going into homes and shooting everybody you see.
I mean, I think that's
men, women,
what
children.
At least every military age male.
So, yeah, I've got the articles of the Muslim or of the Hamas covenant, which they declare themselves as the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Matt, you know a little bit about the Muslim Brotherhood.
A little bit.
And basically, let's see here. There's I don't want to read the whole thing to you because there's a lot of stuff that's in here that would not be relevant to the discussion. But they mention every inch of the Palestinian region should belong to Muslims. Declares the role of women in their society is to be a maker of men. It condemns any organization, even Freemasons, Rotary clubs, and intelligence agencies, if they're all in the same category, that they are saboteurs because they promote subversive ideas of women. They're to be homemakers and child rearers. That's it. So, not necessarily a BLM, aligning with BLM movement there, since.
Well, but that's the funny thing, right? So you got all these people that are talking about this group, and doesn't realize if you went over there, they would kill you. Like
in Article 20, it's basically why they kill women and children. There is no difference between a man, a woman, or a child. They are all the enemy, and there's no distinction, which actually is very similar to how the Nazis viewed their enemy. Is you just wipe the race out.
Yeah.
It's not about fighting men. It's about they're of the wrong race and they must die.
And
it's just same ideology over.
Yeah.
And over.
Well, and so it was really so strange because even before all of this happened, I'd gone back through and I was like, I was trying to read, which is difficult for me, but trying to figure out like how they got all these people to, like, at least in the the German army, how they got them to view these people as not human, because it's a total brainwash. They're less than human. They're rats, basically, and it was funny because I was watching the movie Inglourious Bastards, and at the very beginning of that movie, I don't know if you've seen that movie, Chet.
Which one? I watched it recently. Yeah,
Inglourious Bastards.
Oh yeah.
So when you see at the beginning of that movie, Christoph Waltz, who may have like that portion of the film, may be the greatest acting in all of movie.
Dude,
history.
that first scene in the house, cinematography gold.
Yeah, it was
like
really
unbelievable.
good.
The cinematography, and then just the way that
the acting,
he
the
played,
camera angle, everything about that. Yeah,
it was perfect. But what really struck me was when he was talking, he goes, because I'm basically comparing himself to a hawk. I think like a hawk. I know how a hawk thinks, but, and most people do. He goes, but what's different about me is I understand how a rat thinks. And that's how he finds the Jews and that's how he views them. He goes, would you be upset, if a rat just, or if something ran across your floor, would you be upset? And I was like, no, but would you greet a rat with that same, we don't know why we don't like him. We just don't like him, and it's like, that's basically what it comes down to. They don't like these people. They don't know why they don't like these people. And, but how did they get to that point where you can convince, and we see it today, we see it with our government. And that's more of what I was looking at it, because you had them do it with the vaccines. Like, okay, if you're not going to wear a mask and you're not going to take the shot, then you don't care about me or anybody else, and I hate you for it. And that's how they divided us.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that coin, there were people that said, if you wear a mask, you're an idiot and dummy, and I hate you. And I know I don't like you just because you're wearing a mask.
And I'm saying, but it's the division going both ways, right? But that's how easy it was to do.
Oh yeah. Well, look at. I don't know if we want to go here. How the evangelical church rallies around people or a person that doesn't bestow any of their beliefs.
That's why I quit listening to Christian talk radio when Trump ran for president, because he was the savior.
Yeah, it's and there's a lot of people got in lockstep only because all the other believers were like, this is the way out. This is how we're going to become a quote unquote Christian nation again, is because of this politician who demeans women, has been married to however many times.
Right. Yeah.
Probably not somebody that you'd want to watch your kids. Like, it's just, and not to say that he didn't do good things, but I think that people get caught up in the moment.
I've had this argument so many times. There's political leaders that you're like, okay, they might do a good job leading this country in the aspect that it needs to be led business wise, because that's what the country is.
Yeah.
It's a huge business, and you're trying to keep it going. And
I'll give you a point. I think this makes my point in this round. So Trump has come out recently and said, I am not anti-abortion. If I were president again, I would relax laws around abortion. We'd allow abortion up to some length. And then people are saying, well, dude, when you ran for president earlier, you were like all against abortion. And naturally before that, you were all for it before you ran for president the first time.
Right.
And he's like, I told the people what they wanted to hear, and so I can get elected. And I gave them what they wanted. He appointed Supreme Court justices that were...
He was good to his word.
Constitutionalists. So, but I can look at that now, and I'd like to say I saw this then. You could look at it now and say, I don't support Trump because what Trump is saying now is not what I want. And there are people that refuse to see what he's saying now because they are all in on him no matter what. And they will argue with you that he didn't say what he actually just said, that he's for abortion.
Right.
They're like, no, he's not. And like, well, you can go back and find decades worth of stuff where he said he was for abortion. You can find a few years where he wasn't. And you could find a month ago where he said he was. So... are you blind? I'm not blind. You're a dummy. You're listening to mainstream media, and it's like, no, I'm listening to Trump. Yeah. Like that's what he's saying. And so I think that is a microcosm of how you can have a group of millions of people that are in a locked area surrounded by Israel, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. And let's go ahead and elect these people because it's going to be better. I believe it now. And then they get in power and they're not good. And then they're like, yeah, you're not going to vote anymore. You know where else you can't vote for your elected officials right now?
Where?
In Ukraine. Zelensky banned all elections.
Oh.
You can't vote. You can't. There's no. Everybody that's in political power will stay in political power until he says we can vote again.
Oh, well.
There you go. I mean, but
I thought Obama was going to do that when.
Well, and everybody thought Trump was going to do that. I mean, it's crazy. But I'm with you. It's horrible. I do think there's going to be increased violence around the world. I don't think it's going to be like this mass. I mean, they can't declare war per se, but they can have a bunch of crazed lunatics that are already in regions of the country.
In that jihad day
of the world
tomorrow, October 20th.
Is that what they said? I read next Friday.
Yeah. If that came out.
I don't know if next Friday is this Friday. I don't know the translations of Arabic into this Friday or next Friday. If I said next Friday, I'm not talking about this Friday. I'm talking about the next Friday.
Right, the 20th. That would be, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
So just be wary on Friday. Tomorrow when we're recording is...
I mean, and this isn't just due to this, but I would always have your head on a swivel at all times anyway. Oh, yeah. People go day to day and don't pay attention to anything. They got their heads in their phone. I've talked about this before.
Dude.
Always be aware of your surroundings.
Speaking of heads in the phones, 2 instances on this trip I was just on, and I literally got off the airport and came into the studio. So this is very fresh. We had a dinner at a restaurant that it was like 3/4 of a mile from the hotel, like while I'm walking, and we're in downtown Atlanta. And so I walked down there by myself. We have dinner, found out one of the other guys that went, and he walked too. So we walked back together. We get to this intersection, and there's this dude in a vehicle, head in the phone. He's got a green light. He's the only guy at the intersection. And it's like, do not crosswalk here. Like there's traffic. It's just like, don't, because they have a green light. So we're sitting there waiting on the guy. And the guy that's with me, he's like, man, do we go? I'm like, dude, he's going to look up from his phone and see that it's green and run us over. Like that's what's going to happen. But he's totally missing the whole light. And so we talk a little bit more. And then I'm like, man, he hadn't looked up once. He is in his phone. So maybe we should go. So we kind of take a few steps and then kind of back up a little bit. And then he noticed us and like looked over, and I point to the green light. And he looked at the green light, looked down back at us, and then he pointed to his phone like, nah, I'm not going to drive right now. I'm going to stay on my phone. Go ahead. Like what in the world? So there's that. Like this guy he's in the middle of traffic on a green light, and he's like, I'd rather not drive right now. I'm going to stay tied to my phone.
If you were a jihadist, you would have had him wrapped up.
Oh yeah,
with a
yeah.
bow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
The funnier in the phone thing, and it's sad and funny. I was in Atlanta at the Atlanta airport, and the train. I don't do the train. If I have time, I walk. It's a good time to get some exercise in between airplanes. So I had to walk from check-in to Terminal D, which is forever. Like, it's a long way. But they have those conveyor, the flat conveyor belts that are like.
I've traveled through that airport more times than I can count.
Anyway, so I don't use those either. I just walk in the middle of all that. However, lady on her phone, coffee cup on her phone on the thing. I had never, until today, seen anybody just stand on one of those things until they got to the end without taking a step. You fall rather fast. It was like, boom. I mean, just bam, coffee everywhere. And I was
oh man,
I was 3 people away from her. So the 2 people in front of me, which were ladies, both ran to her aid to help her. And she was like dazed, like, what happened? I'm like, well, yeah, quit paying attention to what's going on around you.
Where the sidewalk ends.
That conveyor belt is going to stop. So anyway.
That's when you cue up the old George Strait.
There you go.
Keep your head on a swivel. Pay attention to what's going on.
And then pay attention to this next segment, which is top 3 things you need in case of an emergency.
Yeah. And so I'll give you an example of today. I rode on the tram from the rental car facility I looked at everybody that was on the train with me. Like, who's here? Anybody looking shady? Let me check out. Move. I don't like these pants. I don't like the back pocket in them, so I move my wallet to my front pocket. Just that kind of stuff. You just paying attention.
Always have my wallet in my front pocket.
You have a Costanza wallet, don't you?
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I've got like the opposite of that. All right, we'll be right back.
At Admiral's Pennant, our mission is to offer the latest and refined, high-quality masculine products and services to the modern gentleman, as well as provide him with the tools and products necessary to look, act, and feel confident in his appearance and social interactions. Check it out at admiralspennant.com. Without it, you might as well shave.
And we're back. What we got going on, Troy?
We got top 3 things to have in an emergency. We're gonna start with you, Chet. If you're ready, what you got?
Yeah, let me pull up my notes here.
So emergency, what you got?
So I'm not gonna. Matt's gonna say this. I'm not gonna put it in my list. We talked about it before we went to break. You ought to be alert. Just be alert of all your surroundings. But in an emergency, I initially thought about this through and wrote my list down if I wasn't at home. But then I got to thinking, well, where are you when the emergency happens? You could be at home as well. And I'm like, the
list changes.
It doesn't.
The list somewhat changes.
It doesn't for me,
depending on your location. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, the ability.
I tell you, before you start, there's about to be an emergency.
Is the sush loose
in this studio?
Yeah, he's chewing.
I can hear that dude chewing those freaking bugles.
Dude, they're not coming. I put the mic way over here.
Still, I
can hear you chewing those.
I can hear it outside of the headphones. It's like it's not in the microphone, but it's coming outside the headphones.
Man,
I'm about to lose
my ever-loving mind.
Something.
Number 3, the ability to start a fire.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about you've brought that one up many times.
I know. The ability to start a fire, which gets you a number of different things. And drinking water is included in your ability to start a fire.
I mean, that's like a life skill.
Should be. It's not. Many people don't have it. Number 2, a good knife. Should have a good knife with you and within reach. And then
check.
Number 1, something to keep you warm.
Check.
Because in not all cases can you depend on the fire to keep you warm. You may not want to be seen in certain instances, and you need to still need to be able to be warm. It is fall here in Kansas, and that becomes a thing. What if your car breaks down when you're trying to drive to Colby, Kansas or something? You could be in big trouble if you don't have the ability to stay warm. Your car breaks down, won't run, your heater's gone. What are you going to do? Anyway, those are my 3. But wits, I'm with you.
SA.
And if we're talking about like there were coordinated terrorist attacks across the country, a plan would be one of those as well. Like, what do you do in case of emergency? You execute your plan. You should have planned for this. But that's honorable mention. I shouldn't have got that. Maybe you guys already had that on your top 3.
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
I didn't think as deep as you.
Okay.
I think those are life skills. I think I kind of thought of it like, oh crap, it's emergency. Like something just happened right now. What do we got?
Yeah.
Number 3 for me doesn't really necessarily pertain to me, but it's an EpiPen. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody with an allergen.
Like in a movie?
No, like
in real life?
In real life.
I've never known anybody that needed an EpiPen.
I've known a few.
That have said.
That have used one?
Yep.
Okay.
That have said, oh, man, I hope I have my EpiPen in my purse, or I hope I have, Like,
well, if your life depends on it, you better not hope.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I've heard people say that. Like, if my life depended on it. Number 3, carry around your EpiPen, bro.
So same kind of thing. I was actually in Oklahoma with a friend. That
I'm more shocked that you have a friend.
I got a few, not many. I got a few. You two aren't included.
Yeah.
So
I know. We're just co-host in Matt's life.
She was like, she said, "Hey, here's my EpiPen. If for whatever reason I get stung or whatever, here's where it's at, and here's how you use it because you might have to
use it on me."
Because she goes, I'm severely allergic to wasps and bees, and I was like, "Wasps? I never heard of anybody that's allergic to a wasp, but apparently there's some severe allergens there." And then I hunted with another guy. He was an older gentleman that had already had a heart attack, open heart surgery, and all that kind of stuff. And he told me, he goes, "Hey, if I slump over in my chair and I'm grabbing my chest or whatever," he goes, "I've got nitro pills in my backpack. Here's where they are. Here's what you do. Just put it on my tongue, let them dissolve, whatever, and I'll be good." And I was like, "Oh." So always, have the meds that you're going to need.
I'm saying 8 chances out of 10. When we go hunting, do you like duck hunting? Do you remember me saying, "Hey, just so you know, I put my keys right here in my blind bag"?
Oh yeah, every time.
I do that all the time. Like if something happens to me and you need to get to my truck to get me to safety, here are my keys. Like this is where I put my keys. Yeah, that's a good. It's kind of on the planning side too, right?
Yeah, it's good. Number 2, a tourniquet.
I agree, 100%. And none of my work belts are like this, but my casual belt, the one I'm wearing right now, it's not a typical belt. It's one that you could infinitely tighten.
You can
for that purpose.
It up good.
Yeah. For that purpose, you can get it on an arm if you need to.
Yeah. So you always got one.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice.
I have 2 in my truck at all times.
Yeah.
Cat tourniquets.
You probably have like a trauma kit with powder and all that kind of stuff.
2 of them. Yeah.
And number 1, water. It's always good to have water. I learned that going hunting with you so many times. Just, oh yeah, I got some water in the back.
Yep.
Started thinking, man, I just need water in the back of my car. So yeah, always have water. And we always have it at home too, extra water, because sometimes the city cuts off water. If you're in the city, it can happen.
Yeah.
Stores run out of toilet paper, Crazy stuff has happened before, so
that's
stock up.
That's when in an emergency you have a generator and a bidet.
There you go.
That may be the only time I would ever use a bidet.
Is that your number 3?
I did. Well, you could use a wash rag and then like wash the wash rag.
Gross.
But I mean,
you're not going to get clean with one wash rag.
If you're in
maybe
an
2.
emergency situation.
Maybe if you fold it a few times.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
Number 3, situational awareness, which we already covered. But a lot of emergencies are compounded by people not being aware of what's going on. So, as an example, you can, let's say that there's a wreck on the side of the road, right? And you're so hyper focused, you're looking at that wreck, and you guys give me a hard time behind because I call them lollygaggers because that's what they're doing. They're lollygagging around.
Rubberneckers.
That's what you guys call them. But they're looking at that, and then all of a sudden, bam, they smash in the car in front of them because they're not aware of what's going on around them. So that's a very simplistic way of describing situational awareness. Don't get so hyper focused on this big problem. Look at all the little problems around you and resolve those really quickly, because then that can keep you out of that big problem.
Yeah.
Wildfires are one of them. Hey, it sparked up. Look at the wind. Look at what the wind's doing. Be aware of that situation. You know, don't just wait for people, because the government's always way behind. You know, think for yourself and be like, hey, I might want to get some stuff together and have a plan to get out of here.
Dude, even like driving in the springtime here in Kansas, like going. I may have talked about this story before, but the Moore tornado, the F4 that hit and leveled Moore, hit 3:00 and hit the schools and killed a lot of people and destroyed a lot of Moore. Ashley and the kids were coming back from Louisiana that day. And I told her the day before, I called her and I said, tomorrow is going to be a huge tornado day in Oklahoma. I don't know if I want you to come home. And she's like, well, why don't you want me to come home? I said, because you normally leave at such and such a time, which is going to put you in Oklahoma City between 3 and 4 o'clock. And I don't want you in Oklahoma City between 3 and 4 o'clock. And she said, well, if I leave at 7 a.m. And I said, look, if you are in Edmond by 1 p.m., I'm okay. That's north of Oklahoma City. I'd be okay. If you don't leave at that time to get you there, don't go. Well, they stopped and ate at Chick-fil-A in Moore, Oklahoma at lunch at noon. And they were in Edmond by 1. At 3 o'clock, that Chick-fil-A got hit. Like just being prepared.
Right.
Wow.
Think what could go wrong,
and
pay attention, make a plan.
So what's so funny about that is I'm the planner. So I'm always aware of the situation, and then I plan for it, which my number 2 is have a plan.
Yeah.
So number 2, have a plan. But my wife and kids get so sick of it, because I'm like, hey, it's something as simple as we're going to go up to Kansas City, for the weekend or whatever. And I'm like, hey, did you check? Because I do the same thing. I was like, did you look at the weather? Mm-hmm. I was like, because there's supposed to be storms rolling through, and that I-35 corridor is always getting pounded somewhere, and so and they always get tired. Oh, whatever, hey, I told you, so just be careful. So 1, be aware of the situation, your surroundings. 2, have a plan.
I'll give you some practical advice there on some, I guess you can call it OCD or stuff that I do. I travel a lot to places I've never been and some places that you may not want to go, in China and Saudi Arabia and whatnot. I study a map of where I'm going before I go, and I find out where the embassy is. I understand directionally rivers, where am I staying versus, what's the route I'm going to take to get to where I'm going to visit. I get all that and just kind of locked in my head to a certain extent. I don't print stuff and carry it with me, but I know that if I get stuck at such and such a place, what direction I need to head to get towards where I want to be. Just to have a little bit of awareness of what's going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's part of planning, I think.
Yeah. It falls into that plan. And then number 1, and I could have gone, there's a couple different ways I was going to go with this one, but I really think the biggest thing is always listen to your gut. If your gut's telling you something ain't right, it ain't right.
Yeah.
Leave. Get out of that situation.
Yep.
And
100% agree with that.
Both times that I got blown up, I had a gut feel that I didn't listen to. Never, there's always the.
But did you have gut feels on other days that you didn't get blown up? This is not like 100. Your gut isn't 100% accurate, but you still need to listen to it.
Right. But when you get and people know the and I'm sure that you've heard it. It's like, hey, no,
Yeah.
You get this feeling and you're like, okay, maybe I need to avoid that. And I was like, I can't. I've got to do this.
So I met a guy a couple weeks ago, and he was weeks away from a home invader in Wichita, by the way. Woke up. He has dogs. One of them's a Doberman. My dog, your dogs probably all bark when somebody comes over. Kind of freaks out. His dogs do that, and well, your dog doesn't. Okay. Anyway, he always had this assumption. I don't have to worry about as I sleep at night, because if somebody tries to get in, my dog's going to wake me up, and I will be able to react. And he also, every now and then, this is probably like this in all of our houses, sometimes one of the kids or a wife is up later than you, goes and maybe they leave a light on, maybe they're watching TV, who knows? And he said that it kind of happened every now and then. Forget to turn out a light in the extra bedroom or something like that. And so he woke up in the middle of the night and he smelled smoke. And he's like, do I smell smoke? And, just kind of in a stupor of waking up in the middle of the night. And then he's like, not only does it smell like smoke, it smells like cigarette smoke. Just really weird. And then he kind of looked, and the light coming from under the door was like, well, man, my wife didn't turn off that light in the kitchen or whatever. That's kind of a bummer. And then he noticed that the light was not constant. He's like, well, that's really weird. And then he kind of got up and was like, man, what, am I asleep or still, kind of dreaming, whatever. And he's like, man, that's cigarette smoke I smell. I am asleep right now. There's no way there's cigarette smoke in my house. Opens up the door and looks down the hallway. There's a dude smoking a cigarette in his chair watching TV.
What?
Yeah. Dogs, no concern in the world. Not a big deal at all. No barking. They didn't even get up when he got up. So he goes back into his room, gets his handgun, wakes up his wife to call the police. There's somebody here. She calls the police. He kind of eases down the hallway and makes contact with this individual. Like, what are you doing here? And the dude's like smoking a cigarette, watching some TV. Like,
it's obvious.
Like, and it turns out, and we don't have to go through the whole story for time's sake. He was prepared to harm this individual if there was any sign of aggression, but the guy never showed signs of aggression. He also kept his distance. He was very smart not to close the distance to where there could be an incident. Noticed that he had brought in he had like a solar light from outside, like brought it in with him. And was like, well, so he was in my backyard. Like, this is weird. Okay, so he must have gotten in through the back door. Maybe that's why the dogs weren't barking. Anyway, the cops got there. Everything panned out, but the guy was mentally unstable and had lived in this house, 5 or 6 years ago for a long time. So in his not with it, just found a way to go home. And was there. And fortunately, this guy didn't just kill him outright. But yeah, you just never know when those emergencies take place. Like you in the middle of the night at your house or whatever. But he did a really good. He knew where he kept his gun by his bedside for something similar to this. He did a good job of waking up his wife and just giving her clear direction of what to do. And then he approached the situation with a very, prepared to do the worst, but I'm not going to initiate that. I'm going to talk very calmly, tell the gentleman to leave in a stern voice with some choice language to let him know I'm serious, but I'm not going to escalate it anymore to where things have to go. It's going to be on him to escalate it with me if I'm going to, take that next step. So you just never know. The dude reached in through the doggy door and unlocked it, so he has already corrected that. He closed off the doggy door, built it into the wall on the back of his house where it's nowhere near the door where you can reach up and unlock anything. So anyway, like, you just never know. You just never know when all this stuff's going to happen.
Yeah. I check every door and lock every night. It's like,
because you're a trussel.
Just a habit. Yeah.
Because you're a trussel. You can't not if you have a door, it should be locked.
That's true.
Yeah. At all times.
Well, no, I mean, not during the day when kids are running around.
Okay.
My dad would think otherwise.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
All right.
Oh my gosh, it's your turn for the top three.
No, we all three already
We all
did
did
it.
it?
Yeah,
Oh.
we're all done. It's a good word.
Did you
Good
not even
word.
pay attention to anything he said?
No, I didn't. Hold on now. I gotta see.
Remember EpiPen and all that?
Yeah. Since I was on the road, I did everything electronically. So hold your horses.
I don't think that's what we're going to do, but you're going to bring us the good word.
Hey,
That's
I
what I'm
started out
saying. I
this
gotta pull it up.
episode saying it was a special episode, and it was because
It has been very special.
it may be the longest one on record.
Not on record. We used to go long. Our first year, I don't think we had an episode under
Under 60 minutes.
under an hour, and we got closer to 2 when we had guests. So
Well, let's just put it this way. If there is a state of emergency, have some battery power, some backup battery, and listen to this podcast.
I've been teaching.
There you go.
Memorize the podcast. I've been teaching through Galatians, a small group
Through what?
Bible study through the book of Galatians in the
Okay.
New Testament.
I thought you said Galatians.
No, Galatians.
Thank you.
And the church, Paul, a letter to the church in Galatia. They give you a little context here, and we talked about a while back violence, and there's some things that you read in Scripture that you just don't want to give credit or you don't want to talk about. But anyway, this is another one of those violent passages, if you will. There were people, some Judaizers in the region that were telling the Gentiles that were coming into the church, that's great, we want you here. Jesus said you could have a relationship with him, but you also have to follow all of the Jewish law in addition to having faith in Christ. And Paul is upset about this. And the law, the Jewish law, the first thing that they needed to do was circumcise themselves. So it's like a gospel plus. And there are churches today that tell you, yes, you got to love Jesus, but you also have to do this stuff. So I call that gospel plus, and that is not biblical, and it's bad. And this is what Paul says about it. He said in Galatians chapter 5, verse 2, Mark my words, I, Paul, tell you that if you let yourself be circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. Again, I declare to every man who lets himself be circumcised that he is obligated to obey the whole law. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace. So what is he saying here? If you think that you're going to follow Jesus and obey the law, you're giving up Jesus and you just need to follow the whole law. So you could be justified by obeying the whole law, and never breaking it, which we know that's why Jesus came, is because nobody could do that. Yeah. So he's saying if you want to go get circumcised, quit following Jesus and obey the whole law and don't violate one thing. Just go do it. That's what you want to do. And he called that earlier in verse 1, that's a yoke of slavery, is trying to live by the law. So in verse 5 here, he says, for through the Spirit we eagerly await by faith the righteousness for which we hope. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any value. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. So he's saying that you if you're circumcised and you follow the law up until the point you follow Jesus, that has no value. If you are uncircumcised, that has no value. If you want to go get circumcised, there's no value in that. Only faith in Jesus expressing itself through love it's the only thing that counts. So he said, you were running a good race. Who cut into you to keep you from obeying the truth? So you knew this, but then you let somebody come in and tell you something that wasn't true. That kind of persuasion does not come from the one who calls you. This is not Jesus talking here. This is what he's saying. And he says a little yeast works through the whole batch of dough. So basically they're giving you just a little bit of things that sound good, but it's actually, it ruins the whole gospel if you think you have to have a gospel plus some other things. Anyway, he says, the one who's throwing you into confusion, whoever that may be, will have to pay the penalty. Brothers and sisters, if I'm still preaching circumcision if I'm still preaching circumcision, why am I still being persecuted? So he's saying, clearly, I'm not telling you to do this. They don't like me. They persecute me because I'm telling you don't have to be circumcised. It says, in that case, the offense of the cross has been abolished. As for those agitators, I wish they would go the whole way and emasculate themselves. So,
cut it off.
if you want to talk about Paul being upset, the words that he's using here
Or violent.
Yeah. I wish the people that were telling you, follow Jesus, but also follow the law, when they're doing their circumcision, they should just go ahead and cut off their whole manhood. That's pretty powerful. He's pretty upset about that. Like that is you don't hear that coming from the pulpit today. But this is how fired up Paul is to tell you. So if you're listening to this, you may not be a believer, and you may be looking into this, and you may say, the reason that I don't want to get involved is because some religion is going to tell me that I have to go do this, I have to go do that, I'll have to go do this. I'm telling you, that's bad. That's what Paul is saying in Galatians. It is faith in Christ expressing itself through love. It's the cross, it is Jesus, and that's it. There's nothing else. So all these rules that you're scared of, they're not important. They're not the rules that are going to get you a relationship with Christ. It's faith in Christ that's going to get you that relationship. Follow him. Don't follow some specific religion that's telling you to do all this other stuff. And don't listen to somebody that's telling you to do all that stuff and believe that's what's actually in the Bible. Because if you dig into the Bible, it says that, the Paul here wishes that somebody that's telling you that would just go ahead and emasculate themselves because they're teaching the wrong thing. So I just want that clarity to be out there. And if you happen to be a believer and say to other people, as you're trying to get them to follow Christ and do all these other things,
stop it.
Don't do that, because that's really, 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 really bad. And then I'm going to come back around in a few weeks and finish out chapter 5 with my good word, because there's some more to this story that's very important. So anyway, that's my good word for the day. I don't even know what the word would be.
Emasculate.
Emasculate? Let's do it. Emasculate. Word. Good word.
Thanks for listening to the Hardheaded Podcast. Don't forget to share this podcast with others to help us get the word out.
Also, if you haven't yet, please rate and review the show. This helps our podcast show up in other people's suggested shows that may or may not have listened to us before.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.